So when I had the unenviable task of telling Julie that she'd developed musician's focal dystonia, that's not a pleasant thing to have to do. But when we did it, the first thing, because I knew her character, I'd taught her a few years before, and I understood her passion and her desire to share her music with people. So now she's sharing something I think even more important, which is helping people get through this damn condition of dystonia. I said to her, let's record it all. Let's do a process of recording and putting strategies into place to get people through this condition. I know that my teaching is different to other teaching around. And I don't mean just dystonia, I mean my approach to brass playing and learning in general. So thankfully she was up for the task, and thus began the journey of getting through this condition. Julie will openly admit that impatience is massively prominent for people, especially if you've been playing at a high level. You want to get back to playing. Let me tell you, you're not playing the way that you were going to, because if you try and play the way that you were, you'll be using the same processes that you were using that got into that situation and position in the first place. My plan is for you to be a more aware, more efficient, better player than you ever were on your instrument, because you know the triggers for where things went wrong, and you know what to avoid, and you know how to practice really carefully, really diligently, and you will actually be a better player when you get through the process. So the important thing here is to recognize that we're changing the brain. We're not relearning the way that you used to play. That's a massively important topic here, is that you're not redoing it. You're becoming a new player, a healthier player, a better player. Okay. So with that in mind, Julie was working with one of our clients, and she took over the reins. I said, Julie, go. You know enough about this to help this person through the condition. And one of the reports back was they're very impatient. And she admitted that it was her issue as well. And if we're impatient, we don't adhere to all the steps that need to be looked after, like stillness, for example. We rush through, our stillness is fine. If you rush stillness, you're going to constantly have to come back and perfect stillness. It's just the way that it works. So I said to her, in regards to this client, you need to tell him to pack his parachute. I drove past one of the local churches a couple of years back, and up on the sign it said, if at first you don't succeed, don't try skydiving, which I thought was hilarious. So then, if you are going to skydive, I don't know about you, but I know if I was going to do it, which I never will, feet on the floor, thanks, but if I was to skydive, the number one thing that I'll do is make sure that I pack my parachute properly. I do all of the processes so perfectly so I'm not at risk. You risk in the sort of paradoxical approach of I'm going to do everything faster. You're actually going to get slower results if you don't stick to the strategies and do them eyes closed, zero tolerance for errors. We must stick to the process of what we lay out for you, because we're changing the brain. It's not just something that we can decide to do and it automatically happens. It takes an understanding, an awareness of the feeling, and it takes repetition. So we cannot rush this process. You will just snakes and ladders, slowly go up, rush, slide back down again, go up, slide back down again. So the most important part of your process here is to understand exactly what you are working on. From the minute from stillness that you start to think, right, I'm about to make my first movement. What's that first movement, and what could possibly go wrong? Are there triggers attached to that first movement? Our whole job here is to find out where the errors happen. We're not afraid of the errors. We're looking for the errors, because once we find them, we know that we're not broken. We know the feeling of what we want. We know we can change the brain. So therefore, the sooner we can find the errors with no emotional attachment and tell the brain we don't want that error, and we do a drill that approximates the feeling of what we do want, then the programming begins. The whole process of retraining the brain begins. But the brain, Brian, he's pretty smart. He knows whether you're confused or whether you're not clear or whether you're in a rush, and he won't change. So we must stick to the professional psychology of clarity and patience. Okay, we're in no hurry. And then we just test and measure. We just test everything, no RAM, and find out where the errors happen. And we do it, the more focused you are with clear instruction to the brain, the faster the brain learns. Do not be in any hurry to do this. Take your time and make sure at the start of each session you are doing whatever the steps are that are required for you. You're different to everyone else. You've got different triggers, you've got different issues. That's completely fine, but when you've got your strategy, you know exactly what you're working on, don't rush. Because you rush once and all of a sudden that joyous skydiving trip might not end up so well. Okay, so I've often said, I wish errors had pain attached because the brain would learn faster. So we have to think about the errors as if they're painful in order for the brain to reject them and do a healthier new process. So please, I beg you, I implore you for this process. There is no hurry. There is no anxiety about when am I going to play again? How long does it take? It takes as long as it takes with your process. The more pure your process, the faster you will develop and ultimately get through to no RAM, no concern, free playing, picking up your instrument, whatever the case may be, with no fear attached, and play more freely with a better sound than you can imagine. So this is the way it works, folks. There is no way to rush this. Whatever you do, take the time, pack your parachute.